Good morning, everybody. Today is the 2nd of January, 2025. I'm your host, Drake Martinez of the Drake Martinez Podcast. And today is it's a weird day. There's a lot of crazy things going on. There was a terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it seemed like there was also a terrorist attack at the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. So a lot of crazy things are already happening. But today's episode is going to be about the H-1B debacle / civil war, whatever you want to call it, this debate that has been raging on for about a week or so now. And I'm in a very unique position to give you guys, frankly, where the bodies are buried when it comes to H-1B. And this is a topic that is very passionate for me and for a multitude of reasons. I'm not going to bury the headline. I'm going to tell you that H-1B is straight up a scam. The program is replete with fraud, and there's so many horrible things that are going on with it and how bad it is for our country that it's kind of mind-boggling that Trump and Musk have said that it's a great program, that they want to use it. I know that they've also mentioned some things in terms of like being able to or wanting to revamp it and fix some of the problems with it, but as I'll get into, that was not part of the program. And it's so difficult to just divide this up into something that's coherent because there's just so much information that needs to be addressed. But in order to give you, sort of like my appeal to you as to why you should even listen to me about this is I filed hundreds of H-1B petitions / what they call PERM. So I'm going to break that down for you guys. What is an H-1B? How does it work? Who qualifies? And PERM. All things related to PERM. And how these work visas damage and make employment way more difficult for hardworking Americans and a lot of the times American vets. So let's get into that, and we'll get into the history of why this is such a catastrophic turnaround for the Trump administration to welcome this H-1B program and work visas in general, and give you guys a lot more knowledge and give you guys a lot more understanding of how this program works, how what they call non-immigrant visas work in general. And I think it's something that a lot of Americans don't know. There's no need for them really to know unless you're filing these things. And the reason why I filed so many was because I worked at an immigration law firm or law office back in circa 2014. So I worked there from maybe 2013 to 2016, 2015-ish. I worked there for maybe 2 years. And all right, so we're going to get into that. The year's 2014, I am a struggling musician trying to make a name for myself in Los Angeles, California. I got injured, and I don't have any health insurance. I really don't have anything to my name, really, just maybe a few $1,000s. And I decide hey, you know what? I can't really walk. I need my legs in order to be able to go to practices, for rehearsals and things like that. And I didn't have a car, so I was stuck to. I was relying on myself to get around on a bicycle, to get around Los Angeles, to get to these rehearsals and things like that. So I decided, I'm hey, look, let me try to see if I can find an office job. So I look on Craigslist and I find an ad for office work at a law office, and I got a bachelor's degree. It says bachelor's degree required, and then that was pretty much it, no legal experience. So I go there and I interviewed for the position. Now at this time, I'm kind of politically aware, kind of not. I would say more, definitely more conservative, definitely supporting Trump at this point, or I think it was Rand Paul. Yeah, probably Rand Paul at this point. And I find out that it's a position for an immigration law office. And I was like, okay, well, I got anything else against legal immigration, so let me work here. And they throw me into a section called PERM. Now, perm is the later on end of what happens when you have an H-1B. So I'm going to give you guys just like a quick overview of how immigration works in the United States and things that I learned there. There's really only a few pathways to citizenship. Despite what people tell you, like, oh, there's so many. There's not really that many. That's another reason why the immigration system needs to be overhauled. Is there's very few actually routes and avenues in which immigrants can become immigrants, and that's an important distinction between non-immigrants. A little bit more on that in a bit. So, in order to become a citizen in the United States, you first have to have a green card. It's just colloquially known as a green card. It's a permanent residency. You are a U.S. permanent resident. You're like this halfway between a citizen and a nobody to the United States. It means that you have the right to live here. You have the right to work anywhere that you want, anywhere that you qualify for a position, and you pay taxes just like a citizen. The only difference is that you can't vote in federal elections. And excuse me, a little side note is you're actually frowned upon from voting in local and state elections, actually, as a green card holder, as a permanent resident, because this can, depending on how you voted, how you registered, can come back to haunt you when you apply for your citizenship, because things like that, like your voter registration, is going to come up. And a lot of people get denied for that, for their citizenship because of that reason. So if you're in that situation, you definitely want to talk to an immigration attorney and get the full range of like what your legal scope is in terms of like being able to vote. Okay, so that's permanent resident. They are considered at that point an immigrant. Before that, meaning you are not a permanent resident, you are not considered an immigrant in the eyes of the law. You are what's called a non-immigrant. And the reason why that's important is because, just like I said, an immigrant, that is to say a person that has a green card, a person that is a permanent resident of the United States, has authorization to travel abroad. They can, as long as they're not traveling for too long outside the United States, they're free to come back and come back and forth as they see fit. They are able to work anywhere that they want, and they're able to live and buy property in the United States. Now, a non-immigrant is a person that's here temporarily. Now, this could be on a student visa. This could be on a visitor's visa. Believe it or not, there is such a thing that people need to come in on a visa to even just visit the United States. It's called B2. There is State Department visas called J1, and there are temporary work authorization visas, and these are what are called your H-1B. Now, there are other variants of the H-1B, but H-1B is the one that's in discussion right now, so we're going to focus on that primarily. So what is H-1B? H-1B is essentially saying that a company is asking for a position to be held. They're posting a position. Now, the rules get a lot more stringent and a lot more restrictive when these people that are here on a temporary work authorization as non-immigrants are trying to petition to become a U.S. Permanent resident. Okay, now again, to the pathways of citizenship, that we're talking about employment-based. So there's employment-based, and then there's family-based. We don't really need to talk about family-based because we're not there. And then there's a third phase where they can essentially just buy their permanent residency. This would be like your O1s, your EB5s, your like spectacular, extraordinary immigrants, people that make like over $1 million a year, people that are investing, large sums of money. They can just essentially buy their green cards. But this is not the case for most people. So the other two avenues is work-based, what we're going to be discussing, primarily H-1B. There's also J-1, but again, we're going to be focusing on H-1B. And then family-based. Now, family-based is pretty self-explanatory. You are an immigrant, you're married to a U.S. citizen, and they're petitioning for you to become a permanent resident, or you're a non-immigrant and you're trying to adjust your status to become an immigrant, sponsored by your spouse. There's also ways to do that for children. There's also ways to do that for brothers and sisters, relatives, parents, etc. But again, we're not going to go too deep into the details. We're going to go back to employment-based green cards, employment-based permanent residency. So at this point, these people aren't considered immigrants yet. They are non-immigrants. So a company, going back, a company petitions or posts a job and says, hey, we have this job that needs to be filled. And we're trying to hire local people, but there's also this pool of lotteries from H-1B candidates from different parts of the world. Now, these people they meet all these requirements. There's things like, they have to have a bachelor's degree. That has to be in a certain field, usually tech-related field, IT-related fields. And they then go into this pool of having, being used, or for lack of a better word for these positions. Now, H-1B is a little, like I said before, it's a little bit less restrictive than it is once you get to the permanent residency phase, which makes sense, right? So some of these people are coming in, they're being hired for positions that the employer, and this is kind of the gray area, so there's a lot more leeway once it comes to H-1B, which is another reason why it's such a terrible program. But there's a lot of grace period. There's a lot of gray area where the employer can say. So the rules are very gray in this area. So the employer is basically saying, I can't find an American to fill this position, so I'm going to draw from this pool of H-1B candidates, and from this pool of H-1B candidates, I want this person that fills the requirements for the job that I'm posting to fall into that position for that role. So they petition for that H-1B candidate to get an H-1B visa. Now, what makes the H-1B visa very interesting, so to speak, is that they are granted work authorization in the United States only. And per their labor condition agreement, also known as the LCA, they have to work for that company for a certain amount of time. It's 3 years and then another 3 years. After that, they either have to go back to their country or petition for a green card to keep them on. That's called a perm. And that is where the bulk or the vast majority of the fraud comes in, is the perm section. It's also the section that I know the most about. Okay, so this company is hiring a foreign worker to work for this position for their company. And they meet all the requirements. They're saying, now they have to say to the Department of Labor, they being the employer, have to say to the Department of Labor, we made a good faith effort in looking for an American to fill this position. So that is why we're drawing from this pool of H-1B candidates. And this is the candidate that we want to pick. They meet all the requirements. They're going to be falling into this position. These are the labor agreements. This is the wage that they're going to be working for. Now, the wage is determined by the Department of Labor, and it's called the prevailing wage. You can go on the Department of Labor's website and determine the prevailing wage for any position, and this is per zip code. So you enter the zip code, you have to enter the position, and it'll give you the prevailing wage. So this is basically that they can't just sign these people on to slave labor. But what you will find is that the prevailing wage is typically lower than what some people would call the industry standard. More into that later. Okay, so these people are here on an H-1B visa, and the employer has said that they made a good faith effort in trying to find an American citizen or an American permanent resident. They weren't able to find somebody for the position, so that's why they're giving it to this candidate. Now, obviously, you would fall into some problems here, because granted that there's a pool of people from which you can choose to draw these people in, and there's supposed to be caps, right? There's supposed to be 85,000 people per year that are in this pool, but there's a lot that goes into the job posting and the interviewing process and how candidates are evaluated to determine if they are minimally qualified for the position, right? And the employer also has to say to the Department of Labor and USCIS, which is the United States Customs and Immigration Services. These are the people that are in charge of granting green cards and granting the visas. The Department of Labor is just there to make sure that, that people are getting paid the correct price, like per their area and things like that. So they also have to abide by this sort of like loose language around that this will not negatively impact the American public in any major way by drawing from these foreign workers. Again, more on that later. So let's say that you're stuck at this 85,000 cap, right? It doesn't sound like a lot of jobs. It doesn't sound like a lot of positions. But it's who is being hurt by filling these positions by foreign workers is the real problem. So again, this whole premise of drawing from these foreign workers is based on this idea that these employers cannot find a suitable candidate that is an American or an American permanent resident, because per U.S. law, they would have precedent over taking these positions over a foreign worker. So some of these positions can be things like that I saw were like software engineer 2, like systems manager, computer systems manager 2, like so they're supervisor. So basically like what you would consider like entry-level positions in the areas of like computer programming, database systems analyst, database people that work on that work on databases, people that work on servers, people that work on in IT, right? So are they really not able to find an American citizen that graduated from engineering school with a computer science degree or a computer engineering degree or electrical engineering degree that can fill these positions? You tell me. Do you know anybody that's looking for work in that area? You could even find people that like are looking for like web developers, and they draw from the H-1B pool to hire a web developer. There's tons of jobs in that kind of realm that these employers are drawing from in order to be able to fill these positions. And what's most egregious is in a lot of the cases, these positions are being filled by H-1B workers after a layoff has occurred, and the current American employees, either American citizens or American permanent residents, are then having to train their H-1B worker, temporary worker replacements, which would, in and of itself, negate this whole idea that they're not able to find an American worker that can fill these positions. Again, the language and the restrictions around H-1B are a little bit more gray, as I'll call it, as we'll say, than it is in the perm. And perm is a lot more restrictive. Perm is a lot more clear on how these candidates can and should be picked when being compared to an American citizen or American permanent resident. Now, the labor condition agreements that we discussed earlier between the employer and the H-1B candidate are sort of like refereed between USCIS and also the U.S. Department of Labor. So all the conditions are being established, and they're like, okay, well, this person has been working for us for 6 years. They meet all the requirements for the position. They've been working for the prevailing wage during this time. They're no longer able to, reinstate or reapply for another H-1B visa to work for another 3 years at our company. So now the company has to post a job posting. Okay, now this is perm. This is where that H-1B candidate would then become sponsored by the company to then get a green card in order to continue working for them, right? Because they've met they met that time limit of being on a temporary work visa here in the United States. They're not able to keep that H-1B visa anymore. And either they're going to have to go home, or now they're at this point where the company is essentially petitioning for them. The problem is the company cannot petition specifically for that alien the H-1B worker, the non-immigrant, the temporary worker, regardless of where that person comes from, they're not able to specifically petition for that person. Here's the rules, and I'm gonna break this down so that even people that don't have any legal experience can understand this. The employer has a job to be filled. They need the job to be filled in order for their work to, for their company to thrive, right? So let's say they're posting a job for computer programmer or a software programmer. Let's go software programmer. Now, they've had a person doing that as an H-1B temporary worker. So they've got somebody that already fills that billet. And what wage have they been working for? They've been working for the prevailing wage. It's established by, again, the Department of Labor. But the law says that that employer cannot just go ahead and pick that H-1B candidate, that they have to make what's called the bona fide offer. The bona fide offer is a job posting to the public, right? So they can't just say like, oh yeah, we look for somebody, but this is the person. The Department of Labor and USCIS is going to be like, well, did you post a job like we told you to? Because it's got to be posted in the newspaper. It's got to be posted online in like 6 different sites. And you have to advertise for the position, for a certain period of time. You can't just like put the ad up and be like, oh yeah, it was up, and then we took it down, and this is the person that we want to hire. So there are some rules that are going to go into place that restricts the employers in order to be able to establish the fact that they have made what's called a bona fide offer, a good faith offer, that they really tried to look for an American citizen. They really tried to look for an American permanent resident to fill these positions, but they couldn't find anybody that was suitable. They couldn't find anybody, as they call, minimally required. Now, a job requirement and a job description are legal documents. Okay, they're very carefully tailored to ensure that these are the right descriptions, the right description for that position, that this is the right requirements for that position. Okay, and then they can't put language as a requirement, right? Because that's way too restrictive. It's essentially screaming to the people like, hey, I really want this immigrant, So especially for like computer software programmer, they can't say like, oh, we need a Farsi speaking person for this position. There's no language requirements. But what they can say is something like, oh, well, you need somebody with a master's degree with 2 years of experience as a computer programmer or related field, that they have to have knowledge in these computer programs, etc. Right? So they post this job requirement along with the job description for this company, and they put it out into the public. It's out there, and as you might imagine, people are responding to this. Now, there's rules and guidelines that say that they have to respond to anybody that appears minimally required. That they have to respond to anybody that appears minimally qualified for the position. Okay, so they can't just post a job and then get these floods of emails from people that are like interested in the job, and then not respond and be like, oh, well, we tried, right? So they got to look through them. So they're the employers, the ones that are not making a bona fide offer, which is the vast majority of them. Because why would they? They already got the person that they're looking for. They've been working there for 6 years for a very comparatively low wage as compared to the market, and that will play into how these negotiations go when they're looking for a candidate. So this is something from my experience, from when I reviewed hundreds of different applications and hundreds of different resumes that these employers are posting. So the attorney will say, okay, give me all of your candidates or anybody that you got questions on, because I'm going to make sure that you're at least keeping the face. Now, the attorney knows, just like how the employer knows, that they already know who they're going to pick, the H-1B candidate. But they're doing all the legal steps that fulfill the appearance, if that makes sense, of a bona fide offer. So they're looking through the resumes, and usually the attorney will be like, okay, well, this person is minimally qualified. You're going to have to scrap your offer. That this person meets the requirements, or if you could try to find some way to determine in an interview that they don't actually understand the concepts of this computer program language, then you have to hire them, or you have to offer them the job, right? That's what they have to say. They have to offer them the job. So in a non-bona fide offer, which is the vast majority, I'd say 99% or more of these offers, that again, the employers know who they're going to pick. Okay, so there's also laws that the job requirements cannot be tailored to specifically to that alien. In other words, that alien has experience in these computer software programming languages, and they pile them on. You know what I'm saying? It has to be something that the majority of computer software programmers could know or should know, but also specific to this company and how this company operates. Okay, so just in case that they're, which they are sometimes, questioned by USCIS, and USCIS might do what's called like an RFE, a request for evidence, to dig deeper into the hiring process. So let's go back. The employer gets hundreds of resumes, hundreds of different applicants, and a lot of them are minimally qualified. So what does he do? He gives them a questionnaire and says like, well, what would you do, like, to try to probe deeper, right? Some of these people might be BSing. Some of these people might be the real deal, that they might actually know these computer software programming languages that they've determined are requirements for their position. Now, when they're going through this process, they're finding whatever reason they can to get rid of a lot of the applicants. But some of the times they come up to a wall where they're like, okay, well, this person is minimally qualified. And this is how that conversation usually goes from what I've seen. The employer will say to the lawyer, hey, I found somebody that's minimally qualified. What do I do? Well, the lawyer is going to most likely advise them not to break the law and be like, hey, well, if that person is minimally qualified, you've shown that they know their skills, that they've known, that they know all the things that they need to do for that job, then you're going to have to offer them the position. Okay, what wage do I offer them at? Well, nothing higher than the prevailing wage, right? Because that's what the H-1B candidate's going to work for. Okay, because the prevailing wage is their wage, their minimum wage essentially. And why would a green card, why would a company that's petitioning for a green card for this H-1B candidate, essentially like sponsoring their green card, why would they pay them anything more than the minimum wage, if that makes sense? Going back to that other candidate, the U.S. citizen that has all the experience, that has all the degrees that they're looking for, that knows all of the computer programming languages that they're looking for, this guy or gal is going to say, okay, yeah, thanks for the interview. I would be happy to take the position. Thank you for the offer. What now the negotiations come in, right? So now the employer is going to be like, okay, well, we're offering you $85,000 per year. Now, the American who has been working at companies that don't do this kind of crap is going to be like, what? Like, I make $140,000 a year. You got to be kidding me. You're offering me, like 100? Let's say that's the numbers. They're like, okay, we're going to offer you $100,000 a year. The American is going to be like, I'm making $140,000 at my current position. Why would I take, such a huge pay cut to work for you? The only reason why I applied for this position is because it's essentially like, a step up. It's a smaller team. It's a place for me to really shine. It's a place for me to really grow my leadership skills, etc. Whatever reasons, this guy might have, or lady might have even been looking for an opportunity to, okay, well, I got a job offer at this place. and then using that as leverage to their current employer for more money or a better position, right? Now, again, this employer, the one that's making the fake offer, is the fake job offer, is saying, okay, I already got somebody that's going to work for $100,000. Why am I going to hire this guy for 140? He's asking for 140. So the employer goes back to this person, this American, and says, look, my final offer is 100,000. If you don't like it, I'm happy to to part ways here and wish you the best. And then usually the American is usually like, this is ridiculous. Like, who are you hiring for $100,000 for this job? Like, nobody in the industry is paying that for this position for doing the work that you're describing it as. And then they're like, okay, well, we're sorry, but we're going to have to part ways here at the interviewing process. The H-1B candidate gets the job. And then they, meaning the employer, can gather all this information and give it to the Department of Labor that the position was offered and the candidate refused. Okay. Now, that alone is very troublesome. It's very troublesome because this whole idea of a bona fide offer, of making a good faith offer, an offer for the public, putting that job out there, is, given the circumstances that I just described, is totally ridiculous. Nobody's doing that, or hardly anybody's doing that. And what makes matters worse is when you consider what's happening to the veterans that apply. Now, this is a lot more in the IT-related field than in the computer programming and computer software analysts and program analysts, all that kind of stuff. Than those types of positions. This is more specific to IT because there's not a lot of computer programming going on in the military at the enlisted level, or even at for officers. There's not a whole lot of that. We're actually discouraged from that. Like, they don't, unless you're like working for like the NSA or, but enlisted or officers in the military aren't really doing programming, as far as I know. And I was in the Navy, and I work with a lot of those people. They're not doing programming. They might do like a basic amount of it, but it's mostly a lot of IT, server networking, and things like that, and security protocols for different bases and ships and things like that. Anyways, these IT guys might not have the bachelor's degree. They might have like an associate's degree, or they're working towards their bachelor's, or etc. But in a good faith offer, you would consider the veteran that has 4 years of experience, as opposed to the guy that's fresh out of an associate's or bachelor's degree program and doesn't have any experience. Whereas this guy that's in a military vet would say, like, yeah, I'm working towards my bachelor's. I'm taking online classes now that that won't interfere with my with my work, because it's part time. I'm at the junior level classes right now, but I'm available to work, and I might not have that bachelor's degree, but I know all of the networking protocols, everything that you're asking for in the job description. I can do that, and if you give me a chance, I'll show you. This is what they're saying in these correspondences with the employers. They're like, if you give me a chance, I'll show you just exactly what I'm capable of. I did networking for my ship. I networked the entire ship's databases and servers while we were underway. I really know what I'm doing. And if you give me a chance, I can show you just how invaluable I can be to your company. And really honest, straightforward shooting guys that do have all the experience that these employers are looking for, might be a little bit short on the education. And then some of them might actually even have it. But again, you're going back to those tactics that I described to earlier, where a lot of them aren't going to be willing to work for that wage. The vast majority of them aren't. So again, when the employer comes up to this point in the interviewing process where they're like, yeah, you know what? I wasn't able to use any of my normal tactics to to throw this person off of the interview, and they're qualified. What do I do? Offer them the wage. Okay, we're going to give you $55,000 as a IT as a IT networking specialist for our company. They're going to be like, 55,000? Are you kidding me? Like, I'm making 80 right now. Like, why would I step down and make 55 at your company? They're like, okay, well, sucks to suck. Move on, I guess, if you already got a better job. But this is the fraud that is replete throughout the H-1B/perm process. Americans, particularly veterans, college grads, are all being overlooked for these positions in order to fulfill a slot, a position that they can save themselves money because they're, again, it's simple math. It's the prevailing wage, which is lower than the industry standard, plus them having to pay for the attorney fees, plus them having to pay for the immigration fees for USCIS. All of that amounts to a lower cost than it would be to pay an American a fair wage that is the industry standard. And this is the reason why these employers want to keep H-1B. And it shouldn't be any surprise. Oh, we love diversity so much. We love immigrants so much that we want them. That these are the best and the brightest. No, these are people that are willing to work for less. Now, what makes this worse for the Americans is, from the employer's perspective, if they hire an H-1B candidate, they've got an employee that will work at a stable, low, predictable wage with no recourse for quitting, no recourse for negotiating for a higher wage. None of that stuff can this H-1B foreign worker do. They are there for that wage per their LCA, their labor condition agreement, and there's nothing they can do about it. And I'll give you a short story about just how horrible this can be for these people. Is I saw a case once where there was a guy who worked at he was an H-1B candidate, worked there for 6 years as an H-1B foreign worker, and he worked at like an IT related company. He worked there for 6 years, and he got his green card from them because they filed a perm case for him. It got approved. He got his green card. The day he got his green card, he quit that company and worked at Subway. Now, this is a guy with, I'm pretty sure he had a master's degree or a bachelor's. At the very least, he had a bachelor's degree, obviously, but he might have had a master's degree. And he quit this company because of the abuse that that had sustained there for 6 years. And he decided, like, I'd rather work at Subway than at this company for another day. So he worked at Subway, and it hit him that, oh, well, now I got a petition for my wife's green card. Okay. And I don't have the income to support her, because if you look online, there's I-864, which is the affidavit of support, meaning that this green card holder, in this case, because he's now a permanent resident, is petitioning for his wife to get a green card. Back then, you could do that. I think the rules have changed since Trump was in office the first time. But this is during the Obama years, and that was okay. You could do that as a permanent resident. And now he doesn't meet the minimum wage salary to be able to even afford his wife as a green card holder. So he's like, okay, what am I going to do? He finds his friend that worked at the company that he worked at, a guy that he was obviously, buddies with, a friend of his. And he was like, hey, would you mind being my joint sponsor? And, throwing your wage in and, putting your name on the line also to petition for my wife for her green card. And the guy was like, to his credit, was like, yeah, I'll do that for you. And this just illustrates the amount of abuse that these workers take, from these companies, or they can take. Sure, I got relatively crap pay, but it was way better than what I would have gotten in India. It was way better than the conditions that I would have had in, some other country. And I got to come to America, and now I got a green card. So some of them make great on it. Some of them are abused. But the crux of my argument is the amount of Americans that are being overlooked, turned down, and especially for veterans, being neglected from these positions. And I think that the law is totally ineffectual here. It's ineffective, it's ineffectual. That they have to know that these employers are not putting forth a good faith, bona fide offer for these positions. Okay? They must have seen the correspondences just as I have, and have seen like, okay, well, the wage is way too low for the industry standard. Okay, well, this guy might have known, 5 out of the 7 programming languages that they were asking for, but the 2 that he didn't know, he knew related programming languages or relevant programming languages or different ones that, given a little bit of training or, a little bit of time, like he could have easily obtained knowledge or skills in those fields, right? But that's not how this works. They label it as like, okay, well, these are the minimum requirements. If it was a good faith offer, if it was truly a bona fide offer, you would take some of these people that are like, hey, I'm an engineer, I'm an American, I graduated from this school, I have 2 years of experience as opposed to the 3 that you're looking for, and I know all the programming languages that you're looking for. I'd be a great fit. No, you're not exactly what we're looking for. You don't meet all of the requirements that we posted in our job description. Or again, going back to that military person that, has plenty of experience, but maybe not the education that they're looking for, or a degree in a different field, but is loosely related. And I know that because I have gone into job interviews for positions that I wasn't qualified for. Specifically this one, the one that I'm talking about. Now, he didn't say no, he said like no experience was required, but he was still looking for somebody that like, knew a little bit about the law. I didn't know anything. I just went in there and I told him like, from my heart that like, look, every job I've ever had, this is the truth. Every job I've ever had, I was indispensable after a certain amount of time. Let's say like 6 months to a year, I became indispensable to that company and then to the people with whom that I worked. So maybe I'm not the most knowledgeable person, but I'm hardworking and, I pick things up pretty quickly, and I'll be able to figure out the lay of the land, so to speak, and be able to do a great job. And I'll be indispensable at this place, just as I have in all my other jobs previously. And then he was like, okay, I'm sold. The job's yours. And I got to see, all these different things that are happening in the legal side of the immigration world. And man, as I just described, there's a lot of fraud. You look at these correspondences with these people that are applying for these positions, and they're like, "What are you, crazy? Like, who's working for this wage?" Like I remember one guy that I saw was like, can I talk to the guy that actually knows like technology over there? Because I'm telling you, I know those programming languages. I might not know that one that you're specifically asking for, but I know like seven out of 8. And if this 8th one is such a deal breaker, then like I should be able to more than meet the requirements with the knowledge that I have in this programming language, which is a more advanced form of the one that you're talking about. Like no one uses that one; it's not industry standard anymore. And again, I'm not a programming expert, but I did read enough of these job descriptions and about the programming languages and about how they work, and hours and hours and hours of correspondences via email between these candidates and the HR people at these companies. And it was abundantly clear to me that they were just throwing people's resumes out, that they weren't giving people a fair chance, and that they had already made up their mind long before that they had even posted any of the ads that they wanted that H-1B candidate for a specific reason. And the reason was not because that they were the best and the brightest out of the pool of people from whom they were able to pick. The reason why they picked that candidate was because it was cheaper for them. Bottom line. And anyone that tells you otherwise is either lying to you or ignorant. And I would challenge any of you out there that think that, I'm BSing or what have you. If you decide to work at an immigration law office for more than 3 months, I think 3 months to 6 months is like the amount of time that you're going to take to like, okay, now I understand what he was talking about, where, it needs to be a bona fide offer. These are the steps, of the job posting. This is how you file the paperwork. And then once you start getting to that stage where you're like reviewing the correspondences and you're looking at what these employers are doing in order to circumvent the law and get the person that they want, tailor the job description without tailoring it, so to speak, but they are in fact tailoring it to the person that they want, the H-1B candidate, and throwing away all the other resumes, throwing them out. And then once they do, if they ever do get to a person that they're just like stuck and they got to offer that position, none of them are going to work for that wage. Okay. And I'll say it until I'm blue in the face, because like it was shocking to me and it was horrible to read all of these. And it was eventually why I quit. Like I just couldn't stomach the job anymore. I remember I called out like so sick so often because like I just did not want to go in that office. I didn't want to be a part of like crushing these people's hopes of being able to get a job in that field. I remember reading some of these emails where these guys were like please sir, I just got back from the Marines. I did a lot of networking when I was in the Marines. I might not have an associate's or a bachelor's degree, but I know all of the I know all the techniques that you're talking about. I can do it. I can do this job. I've done it, out in Afghanistan. I've done it out in Iraq. I'd be more than happy to, to show you, just what I can do if you give me a chance, sir. And they're like, nope, screw you. We already got the guy that we want for this job, and he's going to work for peanuts. Thanks for your service, bro. That's how this stuff goes. And Musk knows that. And going into the political ramifications is kind of the perfect segue. Is the political ramifications of this are just, for me, I'm to be perfectly honest, I'm devastated, because now Trump isn't like a person that like I like look to as like, oh, this is the person that's going to fix everything. Like I said, before Trump, I was like more into the Ron Paul kind of stuff, But I did view Trump as like the perfect wrecking ball that would shake the system up and deliver on a lot of the things that we needed in order to change the narrative of how to to improve things in this country. And this H-1B stuff is not new. We had already had a decision. When I say we, I mean like MAGA, make America great again. We had already had a decision on like what was going to be the proper way to handle H-1B, that everyone was in agreement back in 2015, 2016, that including Trump, that H-1B displaced American workers, that it was pretty close to indentured servitude, and that it harmed American workers. And as I'm spelling out for you, it really harms, in particular, American vets. And again, with a bona fide offer, and it's not like the law says like they have to be like 100% qualified. It says they have to be minimally qualified. Okay? Now, again, as I described to you, sure, there's parts of I've seen, sure, and many or probably closer to some of the cases that, yeah, the workers or the applicants didn't meet all the requirements for the position that were posted. But again, when you're dealing with a bona fide offer, when you're dealing with an offer where the candidate or the employer is really looking for the best and the brightest, you're going to be looking at different parts of what that person brings to the table, not just like a checklist. And that is like a warning to any one of you out there, that if you're applying for a position and the HR person is dealing with it like, like a checklist, then you can be pretty sure that they've got an H-1B candidate they already want to give the job to, and they're just stringing you along. You're not going to get that job unless you're like, again, way overqualified. They got nothing they can do to like shoot you down, and then they're going to lowball you. That's their tactics. That's how they work. That's how they operate. So I hope I made this like pretty clear, like how this system works, why it's so repugnant, and the political ramifications. Again, going back to that, is that Trump and everybody from MAGA 1.0 knew what bad news H-1B was, because there was a story during that time where Disney had done something. I'm pretty sure it was Disney. Disney had something to the effect of like laying off like a whole division of IT workers and then forcing their American workers to train their H-1B foreign worker replacements. Which again, they should have been sued, because parts of the stipulation of H-1B is that they made a good faith effort in looking for an American, and again that they are that they're not doing it in the detriment of the public. And in this case, it's pretty clear that both of those conditions have been violated, right? Because they already had Americans doing the job, they laid them off, and then now they're making them train their replacements. So now these people are collecting unemployment, and it's ridiculous, man. It's totally insane what goes on with the H-1B/Perm program. And Trump had made it very clear many times that he was against it. America first, all that. And now we're hearing something totally different. And we'll see. I don't know what else to say other than we'll see. Because it's not like if I could go back, that I would take back my vote and vote for Kamala Harris. Like, that would just be totally unacceptable. But I'm very passionate about this H-1B issue because I'm a veteran, because I'm a veteran of the Navy, the U.S. Navy, and because I've seen firsthand just those stories and like reading the correspondences and reading people's hopes and dreams and the things that they were looking forward to with exciting and new positions. And they weren't even real positions to begin with. They were never considered. They were never given a fair chance. And these employers should all be ashamed of themselves that use these tactics. And this goes out to Valuetainment, PBD, this guy over here claiming like, oh, I'm America first, and blowhard, that guy. I just knew the moment that he brought on Ron DeSantis onto his show and treated him like he was a scumbag, that I knew everything I needed to know about that guy. And I haven't watched his stupid show yet since, And then come to find out, which I'm not surprised, that he's hiring H-1B employees while he's up there, oh, America first. Oh, I love America and immigrants and blah, blah, blah. This stupid blowhard. Anyways, all these people that use these tactics without regard for the people that they're screwing over, the vets that they're screwing over, and the college grads that are just wandering around aimlessly after that. Like, why did I go put myself into debt to get a degree, to better myself, and now I got to work at Starbucks? And to be fair, like, or at least to be to be fair, like a lot of them are probably going to find better jobs at places that aren't going to treat them like a scumbag. But it shouldn't be like that. It shouldn't be like that where these employers get to do that to begin with. And that is the whole point of getting rid of H-1B, to eliminate these scumbag employers from being able to treat their employees like they're scumbags. If they have the skills and they have the, everything that they need to make your company successful and to fulfill that role, pay them a normal wage. Treat them with dignity and respect. That's like probably like the one thing that like I really agree with I wouldn't say leftists, like liberals on, is like these underhanded like trash tactics by these employers, like these people that just don't treat their people well. Like it really pisses me off. I got a division of people that I look after in the military, and then like, I'm not saying that I tie their shoes for them, but I look out for them. Like this idea of like screwing people over that work for you is like totally like anathema to me. Like I don't get it. I don't get where that instinct comes from to screw somebody over that's working for you. That takes their time to like do tasks for you and make your company good. Like, I just don't understand it. I don't understand where these people come from, And then like I heard like Chris Cuomo was like, "Oh, this actually brings a different question that no one's talking about. Is all of this, of course, is to save money. Admitting that it's not for quote unquote best and the brightest. All this is to save money, and that things would be better if Americans could just be okay with paying more. Americans are, from what I've seen, okay with paying more. Okay, I don't know about you, but when Americans know that there's a quality difference in terms of what they're buying, they will pay for the more expensive thing. I would say 8 out of 10. And if you don't believe me, just like look at the people that are buying organic food. It's a lot of people now that are like, "Oh yeah, well, I'd rather pay 20% more now for organic food than, have my health screwed up from eating like crap food that's, void of any nutrients." Anyways, I'm getting close to an hour now. I'm about to wrap this up. Let me know what you guys think. If you have H-1B horror stories that you guys want to share, any rebuttals, I'd be happy to mix it up with people that think I don't know what I'm talking about or think that I'm making this stuff up, because I assure you that I'm not. Like this is the H-1B program. This is perm. This is how these jobs are being dished out. These are the people that they're overlooking and screwing, and this is how it's impacting America. And I don't think it's good, but I'm just one voice. So let me know what you guys think. And again, Happy New Year and God bless.